Welcome back to Refined Leadership. Today I'm going to be giving you the do-it-yourself version of how to deal with rejection. I want to give you tools to how to handle this on a thought level, on an emotional level, and to give you a set of tools for what sort of behaviors you can go take on to make sure you can handle this really crippling emotion. You know, rejection has done horrible things to some really strong men. It's crippled powerful men. It's obliterated powerful empires. It's parked people's dreams, and it is destroyed people's destinies. I want to make sure that if there is a reason that you fail to achieve your goals, it's not because of rejection. Now, I spend a lot of time dealing with people on how to actually get over this, so I'm going to give you the version for how you can handle this yourself. But before I go after this, what I'd like you to do is hit that like and hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with content like this. And what I'd like you to do is also go into the link in the description to go download the Refined Leadership Blueprint. Right now, it's still for free. All you have to do is just give me your name and email so I can go send it to you, and you can have that in your inbox. So if you're excited about learning more about leadership, how to lead yourself, how to communicate more effectively, and how to go and build yourself and go build an organization, then go click the link in the description right now to go download that 100+ page document. Okay, so without further ado, let's get right into it. So rejection is really, really tough emotion to go handle because there's a lot of negativity, and it's almost as if a different person comes out. You know, right now you're calm, everything's great, but then, you know, the old saying is everyone thinks they can go run into the burning building to go save the people from the fire, but no one will really know what it feels like until they feel that heat when they're up against that building. It's only at that moment that something else happens, something else turns on, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that is today. But I like to help you handle that emotion, have a productive way of navigating through it as you go forward in the direction you want to go take things. So first, on the thought level of things, of how to deal with rejection. So understand this, is that there is more likely than not, a deep level type of wound that happened earlier in life. You know, something happened where someone told you no for some reason, and it hurt. It created a lot of pain. It might be a genetic thing, or it may have been a rather extreme circumstance. But, you know, I've learned that a lot of our life has been dictated by, you know, what happens in our lives between the ages of 0 and 6.5. You know, the linguists will call that the critical period. It's where humans are more inclined to learn new language very, very quickly. Any languages you want to go learn after that 6.5 age is a completely different experience. The reason I bring that up in this perspective, even though it's not with regards to a language perspective, is because a lot of your world is going to be constructed inside of that 0 to 6.5 period. So it is what it is. You know, we all deal with tough things throughout our lives. No one has a perfect life, but we do have to navigate ourselves by the experience we went and cultivated, you know, whether on purpose or most likely by accident in those early ages. So understand there might be some subconscious process that makes something a little bit more difficult. So in order to go do this properly, you came to this video for a reason, because you're following this journey with me, or because you have a specific thing that you're dealing with when it comes to dealing with rejection. It might be in a personal context with regards to relationships, or it might be in a professional context with regards to sales or funding or negotiation, or asking for something that makes you a little bit uncomfortable because you're being faced with the opportunity for someone to be firm and assertive back in your direction and say the words no. So think of a specific situation, because when you go through this, I want you to be able to come back to this video anytime you have a situation that you're dealing with that you want to have navigated in a rather productive way. So let's get started. You have your situation. Let's start with the thought level of this situation, okay? Ask yourself a question. What story comes to mind when you think about having to go deal with a situation that you might have to deal with a sense of rejection? What sort of story comes to mind? And here's how I'd like you to process this. Think about what it makes you think when you think about having to go into that situation. The actual thought process. You know, if I might say, if I have to go into a social situation, I think that this negative outcome might happen. By negative for you, that might be where the rejection happens. And then when you get what you think about when you go into the situation, ask yourself what you feel when you think about that particular situation. So the feeling is associated with the thought itself. So when you have the thinking part and now you have the feeling part, the feeling is associated with the thought, and now you can kind of dip into your emotional state a little bit and say, that makes me feel defeated, or that makes me feel like I'm useless, or it makes me feel like angry, or it makes me feel sad, or it makes me feel anxious, or it makes me feel turned on. Everyone's gonna have a different answer for this. We would do this differently in person, but this is an opportunity for you to go explore this yourself. What sort of emotion comes to mind? Now, when you have that emotion, just think about only the emotion, just forget the thought. When you have only the emotion, when you think about feeling the emotion, what's the first thought that comes to mind? So if you say that, hey, this makes me feel like I'm defeated, the first thought that comes to mind might be, I don't know, it might be that I may not be useful in this particular context, or it might make you think of a particular moment that happened, for example, like we were just talking about, in your childhood. When you get back to a specific moment like this, now we can understand what are some of the driving forces that's kind of bringing you to that place. It's okay if you don't get exactly the answer here. What we want to do is lead you on the right path in order to go get there. So you have that thought process, and the thought process is not related to it. You could say, okay, well, let's forget about the feeling and go back to that thought that you had. Now with that thought, you could say, when you think that, what's the first thing that you feel? And you can keep going around in a circle like this, and it typically takes someone, if they're really hesitant to go into situations that is kind of baked in with a lot of rejection, it makes them go into a downward spiral. Because that's the only reason why there's hesitation in the first place. Someone is hesitant to pull the trigger because they feel like they're going to go into that downward spiral. So we want to go and explore that downward spiral by exploring that relationship between the thoughts that you have and then the feelings that come after that. And you can actually get down to the core of what is driving this rejection. I promise you this, it's not the situation itself. In many cases, it's a very, very old situation that maybe somewhere in your brain you forgot about, but your body remembers for some reason in the form of emotion. So go into that cycle as many times as you can. For example, I would say, I'm hesitant about going into a new sales situation. Suppose I'm going into an entirely new industry and I don't know anything about that industry. I'm going into it, okay? So I'm hesitant to going in to ask for the close because the thought that comes to mind is I'm hesitant to ask for money. It's like, okay, so when you think I'm hesitant to ask for money, what's the first emotion that comes to mind? Okay, this helps you kind of explore your empathy. This helps in other leadership situations. So the emotion might be, well, it makes me feel queasy. Maybe queasy is the first word that comes to mind. Ooh, it kind of makes me sick to my stomach, or it makes me shaky. Okay, so when you think about, okay, what makes me queasy? What's the first thought that comes to my mind when I think about queasy? It's like, oh, the first thought in my mind, it comes back to, I think about a situation that I actually got sick from a food situation. And we can go take it down that that pathway. And then, we'll discover, okay, a bunch of things that make you sick food-wise, but I want to think about maybe a social situation that made me queasy. Maybe I might think about a specific situation that, like, wow, I completely forgot about that one moment. I actually felt sick to my stomach the last time I asked for something from someone else. And now you have that one situation, and now that's really, really interesting. Now, when you think about that one situation, what does it make you feel? It might be a more intense version of that emotion, or it might be a different emotion entirely. But because it's do-it-yourself, you go play around with it. So to recap that process, start with the thought process, then figure out what emotion comes directly after that thought process. Then get rid of the thought, go back to the emotion. When you feel that, what's the first thought that comes to mind? And then explore that thought. And then when you have that thought, forget about that last emotion, ask what emotion comes to mind with that. And what you'll discover, it takes you down this horrible, insidious downward loop, which is usually enigmatic of anyone that goes down this process of like this hesitation of like rejection in the first place. I mean, someone's just telling you no, it's no big deal. It really is no big deal, but people hesitate around it for reasons associated with their sensitivities associated here. So when you've figured out what this core driver is, which there might be 1,000 core drivers, but when you figure out a core driver, what I want you to do is this: be okay with it, okay? The words okay, okay? Okay. Be okay with that emotion. Be okay with it because it's the negativity associated with it, or the desire to be distanced from it, or the desire to be away from it, which is actually fueling that negativity in the first place. what you want to do is be okay with it. Okay is a powerful word in psychology to reduce the importance of emotions. I would love to just be able to give you a magic pill or be able to go inside your brain and just rip some of these negative emotions out, rip these negative experiences out. That's not how the brain works. What we need to do instead is starve those emotions, and you starve those emotions by reducing the importance behind them. When you reduce the importance behind them, you start thinking about them so much, you start thinking about more positive things instead. So reduce the importance of these emotions by being okay with these experiences. You might say, I didn't deserve this, or I didn't want this to happen, or I wish this never happened, then I could do better with my life. Look back at the situation, say, you know what, there was nothing I could do about it, and that's okay. That's fine. I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna go start moving forward with it. So from a thought perspective, this is how you're sort of creating the context of where some of this sensitivity, this emotion, this sort of tension, this pain is actually coming from in the first place, is associated with that just weird subconscious emotion. We just want to bring it out to the surface, very Sigmund Freud style, bring it out to the surface and be okay with it. Okay, a lot of people, they are gonna hesitate on asking for things because they don't want to have to go deal with those emotions in the first place. And as a result of that, they stop asking for more. So if you don't have anything that you're hesitating around, ask yourself, what can I ask for more right now that I'm not asking for because somewhere in your mind you just decided that you didn't deserve it? We talked about this in the last video, and this will probably be the last time I talk about it. It's just start deciding that you deserve more for yourself. Just make the decision. Make a decision that you deserve more in your life, and then start acting accordingly. How are you going to navigate in the world, and what do you need to ask for in order to go and be more deserving of those things? And when you go push up against people's no, now you get to go deal with sort of this rejection response. And this is going to happen every time you go level up in your life. When you're going to have a very easy ask that you get over, and then now you're qualified to ask for something more intense. And then when you get over that, you'll be qualified to ask for something even more intense, until you reach sort of a threshold that you say, okay, that's as much as I'm willing to go for, and I have as much outcome as I want to as a result of having incurred all the costs of just dealing with it. So that's that. That's on the thought process of things. So I want you to keep that in the back of your mind, because when we get over this, there's going to be a lot of this that just doesn't have much to do with a thought process in the first place. We're going to be taking action to be getting over this sort of hesitation around rejection. So that's in the thought process and the context behind it. From the emotional standpoint, okay, there's going to be some pain and discomfort that's associated with a rejection, or just knowing that you're going to have to deal with some sense of rejection at some point. I would argue it sometimes it creates more friction for people not knowing if they're going to be rejected. It's like, yes, the answer might actually be yes. It's like whatever they ask for, they're actually going to go get it. All they had to do was ask for it, or they were still going to get the deal anyways, even if they asked for 110% of what they were actually expecting for in the first place. They're actually going to go get it. And it freaks people out, the idea that they actually may not go and get it. This is where becoming okay actually matters again, because if you're more okay with your personal state and with any outcome, you're not actually associated too much with the outcome. You are outcome independent. You don't care so much about the outcome. You don't care if the outcome comes in one shape or in a different shape. You're just going to act in the best way possible, and as a result of that, hope for the best. And that's really all you can do, because there's so much is in your control and the rest of it is truly outside of your control. And people experience some sense of friction and some sense of pain when they don't have control of the outcome, but they really want to have control of the outcome. So there's going to be some pain and discomfort associated with the maybe, maybe I might get it and maybe I might not. So from the emotional side of things, the core behind all of this pain is an emotional circuit called, by Jaak Panksepp, the panic or grief circuit, also known as the separation distress circuit. And I say that because of one really important reason. There's one key word that's associated with this whole rejection business, and that word is the two-letter word no. When someone says no, it means you cannot have the thing that you've just for some reason decided is yours. That thing that you've decided is yours might actually be the outcome that you're looking for. Again, think about your particular situation, either personal or professional, the outcome that you're looking for, or it might be the way that you receive that outcome. Maybe the way you receive that outcome isn't ideal to what you're looking for, and now you feel a sense of loss, a sense of separation from that particular outcome, and that the stress system actually turns on. You might see yourself as someone that doesn't freak out when they lose something important to them. If you're someone like myself who invests in the stock market or invest in real estate, when you see your account go down 50% because the market is going to hell, you're not too worried because you expect that's just a part of the process. But you might freak out if the market is doing really, really well, and then you see your account going down. It means you made some really, really bad decisions along the way. Now you're starting to ask yourself and start doubting yourself and doubting how you made decisions in the first place. But it all comes down to separation distress. In your situation, if you don't get exactly the way you're looking for, it comes down to separation distress. So how do we handle this whole separation distress thing when it comes to rejection? Because someone is denying you something you've already decided is yours, or that you decided that you wanted to get, or there might be some pain associated with not getting it. Ask yourself this, and really, this is a big question of the video. What am I actually losing when someone tells me no? Ask yourself that question and really give yourself the answer. The answer might actually be nothing at all. It kind of makes you crazy almost, because you're like, why do I feel this sense of hesitation if I'm not losing anything at all? When someone is losing social status, they experience an emotion called embarrassment or shame or guilt. You can't be embarrassed, ashamed, or guilty if and only if you're dealing with other people. You take other people away, then you don't have to deal with emotions of shame, embarrassment, or guilt. These are socially based emotions. So maybe what you're losing is a sense of social status. But it's not even a real social status. It might be just perceived social status, because somewhere in your mind you just decided somewhere that, oh, someone's going to look at me a certain different way, and maybe I won't be entitled to certain things, and all of a sudden your life is over. Okay, these are ancient, old, caveman type of emotions that are buried deep down inside your brain that kept your bloodline alive for generations and generations before we entered into modern times, where we don't have to worry about having these emotions in the first place. Really ask yourself, what are you losing when someone says no? And the answer might be not at all. But if it feels like if it's some sense of status, you really have to come back and say, I'm not losing any status at all. In fact, I'm taking a step forward into the direction I want to go, and just failure or rejection or denial is a part of that process. Okay, so from an emotional standpoint, in order to go get there, it's really hard to really remember that in the moment. So this probably belongs into the thought section, but really, really ask yourself, what am I actually losing in this situation? Really bring it top to mind. And as you get closer and closer to the moment that you actually have to experience this opportunity where you may face this emotion, whether it's in the professional context, again, personal context, sales call, if it's in a social situation, a networking situation, if it's in a leadership situation, you're making a big, big change, whatever it is. Okay, go back to, as you get closer and closer to that moment, it feels like, almost the nerves are racking up, the palms are getting more sweaty, your knees are starting to shake. As you get closer and closer to the situation, focus instead on getting more and more present to the moment. And the way I like to get present to the moment, and you can try this right now, is think of a situation far into the future, okay? Like an imaginary situation in the future, okay? It might be, you brushing your teeth later on tonight, or it might be you having dinner later on, or something, okay? Just imagine that situation. You go into the future. Now what I want you to do is think about a situation that happened earlier today, or happened earlier in the week, something that happened in the past. It might have been you waking up in the morning. It may have been you've been taking a shower or going to work or whatever it is that you did. Think about that situation. Go back to that same future situation. Now shift back to that past situation. Now go back to that future situation. All right. Now try to imagine them both at the same time. If you really, really, really try to imagine them both at the same time, a funny thing happens, and what happens, you get present to the moment, because your brain can't focus on two things at the same time. It actually forces you to get really, really present to the moment. So what I want you to do as an exercise, as you get closer and closer and closer and closer to the moment where you have to go and experience this, you want to get more and more and more and more present to the moment. Really make that a practice, because any thought you want to go have, any thoughts that we were just having just a moment ago, it's going to be really hard to keep those top of mind when you're in the mix of this weird concoction of worry and anxiety or fear or anger or the panic or distress or worry or shame or guilt, and anything that's all happening at the same time because you're anticipating this moment. Because your brain, that's just what it does. It just goes and anticipates and predicts things, many times the worst case scenario, which deals with what we're going to go do next. But you want to get more and more present in the moment. Really focus your attention to where you are right now as you get closer and closer and closer to that moment. And now, without further ado, I want you to get to the behavioral side of how to go handle this. Okay, now we've set some context with some thoughts to go think about, some questions to go ask yourself, as well as getting present to the moment. Now it's game time to actually go do the thing. Here are a couple things I would like you to go do as practice. One is imagine the worst thing that could happen in that particular situation. This is step one. Imagine the worst possible thing that could happen inside that situation. It may be really uncomfortable to deal with that reality, but really kind of imagine it in your head, really paint it out, really visualize what that negative situation is supposed to be, that everything went wrong. Don't be so unrealistic about it, but be as realistic as possible as what could actually be the worst case scenario. After doing that, come to peace with it. Say, hey, if this happened to me, no problem. If I tried again, the likelihood of it happening again is very, very low, but I'm ready for it. I'm prepared for the worst case scenario. So after thinking about what the worst case scenario should be, or what it might be, and then thinking about, hey, you know what, I'm completely okay with whatever situation comes to me, if that was gonna go happen to me. Now, go in, again, you're still present to the moment, but behave in a way where that worst case scenario will never ever happen. Think about the things that would put you in that situation, that worst case scenario, and ask, what do I need to do instead to get me away from that worst case scenario? It's easy, because any other situation is anything but that worst case scenario. That puts you in a really, really good situation that no matter what happens, you're gonna be able to land on your feet, because you could handle the worst, and anything that approximates the worst, you can handle that too. Fantastic exercise, especially if you're in that moment, you're about to go in, just think, okay, what's the worst case scenario? Am I cool with it? Okay? Can I come to peace with it? And now let's go into it, and then let's go behave in a way that makes sure I don't have to deal with that worst case scenario. Okay? This is a temporary Band-Aid solution. I'm gonna give you the actual solution of how to deal with this at scale. When you're dealing with whatever this phenomenon is, okay, it might be a sales call, it might be appointments, it might be cold approaches, it might be dealing with a networking event. Whatever it is, what I'd like you to do is prepare in direct proportion for how worried you are about this particular situation. If there's a little bit of worry associated with this particular emotion, what I'd like you to do is prepare in direct proportion to that. You could prepare just for a little bit. If you are extremely worried about having to deal with that situation, what I'd like you to do is prepare in a very extreme way. That means repetitions over and over and over again. If there's a script in your head, go run the script over and over and over again. You want to convince yourself that you are prepared, and you want to be able to, in the moment that your brain turns into scrambled egg because you're so worked up, that you could still trust yourself to go do the process, okay? Competence breeds confidence. So if you're able to prepare yourself very, very aggressively, you will discover that after you get started with it and you're still present to the moment, keep that in mind, if you're present to the moment and you're very, very prepared, you'll discover that it's actually much easier than what you thought of in your brain. It's actually an easier process, and you could deal with it more effectively. So prepare in direct proportion to how bothered you are about whatever that situation you're going into. And then lastly, what I want you to do is take a whole day just doing that thing, whatever it is, okay? Again, sales calls, negotiations, appointments and meetings. It might be cold approaches, it might be meeting new people, it might be connecting with other people, it might be phone calls, whatever it is, spend the whole day doing that thing. The whole day doing that, okay? I'm gonna give you a structure about what to be thinking about before and after each of your repetitions, if you will. So whatever thing you're looking to be, not so concerned about, you wanna have a lot of them geared up and ready to go for you to actually run through those repetitions. Because through running through those repetitions, you reduce the importance of every individual interaction, every individual set, every individual call to a point where it's like, you know what, I was worried about this before, now it's kind of like brushing my teeth. You know, if you woke up in the middle of the night and I asked you to do whatever that thing is, you would do it like it's clockwork. It's now in your blood, it's in your bones. You could do it like it's no problem. So I want you to spend a whole day just working on that thing that you're worried about the sense of rejection for, okay? Get very specific about where that rejection sits in particular. Maybe it's simply just picking up the call. Maybe it's asking for a close. Maybe it is asking for a higher number when it comes to a negotiation. Whatever it is, spend a whole day doing it. And why I'd like you to do this, before you actually start each repetition, get really, really present. Okay? Don't think about anything in the past. Don't think about anything in the future. Just get really, really present and really, really relaxed. Okay? And then directly after that interaction, whether it was a success, you got the close, you got the sale, you got the money, you got the person, you got the contact, whatever it is, if it's a success, great. If it's a failure, also great. But what I'd like you to think is this: I did my best and I'll do better next time. It's great. It takes advantage of that thought loop that was originally going in that negative spiral where you thought something and it was like, uh-oh, that made me feel this. And then the feeling made you think about something else, and then it made you feel something else. And it's just going down and down and down the drain. But what this does, when you actually give yourself this little mantra right after your repetition, it puts you in a hopeful and upward spiral. You said, you know what? I got a success, or I got a failure, or I got somewhere in between. I did my best, and then I'll do better next time. Which, think that all the way through. Did you do your best? You might say, no, I didn't do my best. It's like, well, in your situation, in your current state, with your level of experience, did you do the best that you could in that situation? And the answer is, of course. I want to do the best I can, because if I'm not doing the best I can, then I'm gonna get fucked. So you did the best you could. Okay, great. Did you learn something? Probably I learned a couple things about how the world works, yeah. Do you think you're going to take that information and do better next time? It's like, well, yeah, that's the logical solution. And you want to just remind yourself about that after every repetition so that it protects you from going into that downward spiral. You want to protect that and go into the upward spiral. After every repetition, get back into the present moment, go in, just be relaxed. If you've done your preparation in advance, you're going to be fine. Get present, go in, do what you have to do your very, very best, act in a way that you're never ever going to see the worst case scenario. And then at the very end, remember, and this is where it gets really tough, why I have a job in the first place and why people hire me for this, is like, you need to remember, I did my best and I'll do better next time. And that is the do-it-yourself process of how to go and productively manage rejection. Now, this is really, really cool because now you have a tool set, you have a skill set that you actually can go into situations that you thought were impossible to you from before. You can go into situations you thought were impossible before, and now you can handle it in a very productive way. So start dreaming a little bit bigger, start thinking a little bit wider in terms of what you can do with your social skill sets, with your technical skill sets, with any sort of skill set you want that you need to actually go and move forward in order to move life forward. And the honest to God reality is that the mindset we're taking, the macro mindset we're taking here, is we're stepping into a dark pit. We're stepping into like the unknown. There's absolutely nothing around us, and we don't know what's going to happen. And we've seen people go in there before, and we saw them get bit. You know, we saw them get bit by some scary creature. They weren't killed, they weren't maimed permanently, but they were bit, and that makes us nervous. It says, am I going to get bit too? But that's life here. In order to move forward and to become something you've never been before, you have to go step into places you've never stepped into before. And that should really be the macro mindset behind all this, is a proclivity to go step into the unknown. You have to go step into unknown places and train yourself to be okay with stepping into those unknown places. And if I have to take it a step further, you must go step into unknown places if you expect to advance your life in any way, shape, or form. So that's the do-it-yourself toolkit for how to handle and deal with rejection in a very productive way, both in personal and professional context. If you have questions on this topic, or if you just want to deal with a situation, you know, I go for all these comments, so leave a comment below so I can actually go and see what's going on and see if there's an opportunity to work together. But if it's a simple thing, you know, maybe I could just leave a comment, or anyone else in the community can leave a comment as well. Next week, I'd like to continue this conversation into some of the consequences of going forward, of having to go get past that rejection, is you're going to start accumulating some losses, yes, but you're also going to start accumulating some wins. And there are consequences to that. If you start accumulating too many losses, then you have to deal with more and more failure. If you start accumulating too many wins, equally as scary for a lot of people as you start becoming more successful. So next week, I want to deal with a very, very interesting but really important topic that a lot of people share, and that is both the fear of failure as well as the fear of success. And as you start accumulating some of these wins or losses, how to start becoming okay with some of these fears and being able to navigate yourself from failure into a level of success and not have to go sabotage yourself along the way. Stay tuned for next time. This is Thomas, and I'll see you in the next video.